Okay, are you ready, Jennifer?
I think so. Can everybody see the welcome slide?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Okay, welcome everyone. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. In the meantime, if you could please check your Zoom controls to make sure that your microphone is muted. And if you'd like to have your camera on, you're more than welcome to keep it on. If you need to turn it off sometime this evening, that works just fine as well. You can find those controls in the bottom toolbar on the left. And then please let us know in the chat box if there's a natural resources conservation activity or event that you're looking forward to in 2022. And you can find that chat in the same bottom toolbar in the middle. We'll be using that chat throughout the evening. So if you have a question or something you'd like one of our staff or board members to address towards the end of the evening, please just go ahead and put it in that chat box. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started here. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We're so excited that you're here with us. Doing great voluntary conservation work is what brings us together and unites us. And it's nice to take some time to stop and reflect on that work and celebrate that together. So I'm Jennifer Bois. I'm the director of the Palouse Conservation District, and I am joined by Jody Prout, who will be monitoring the chat and coordinating behind the scenes this evening. We're also joined by our Board of Supervisors and our staff, who you'll be meeting throughout the evening. And we're excited to bring you this presentation tonight to take a look at the highlights from 2021, celebrate what's coming down the road for 2022. And we're really excited to spend the next hour here with you. Just wanted to let everybody know that the presentation is being recorded. And for those just joining us, just a reminder to please use those Zoom controls on the bottom of your screen to mute yourself throughout the presentation. There'll be time at the end if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question. Also, you're welcome to keep your camera on, or you can take that off if you'd like to turn off your camera. So we will have some time throughout the evening to interact through the chat box. If you're just joining us, you're welcome to add where you're joining from in there and get familiar with the controls. Also, we will be raffling off a few items at the end of the evening, so be sure to stick with us all the way through the program. And with that, I'd like to welcome Larry Cochran, the chair of our Board of Supervisors. Larry?
So welcome to our annual meeting. On behalf of the supervisors and myself, who are Jake Smith, Mary Collins, Cheryl Hagan Zachariason, and Chris Heisman, we welcome you to this annual meeting. We wish to share with everyone what our staff has been doing over the last year, and also anyone, if you see something that our staff can help you with in the coming year, make sure that you jot it down and our staff can get back with you. I'd also like to say that we have one legislator with us on the call tonight. Mary Dye is with us tonight. So welcome, Mary. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the staff and let them show you what they've been doing for the last year.
Hey, thanks so much, Larry. So yeah, we'll jump right into it. Thanks for introducing the board this evening. And With that, I also want to just welcome everyone who's with us. You'll be seeing a ballot registration link coming up in your chat box. The Board of Supervisors for the Palouse Conservation District is made up of 5 members. 3 of those members are elected and 2 of those members are appointed by this Washington State Conservation Commission. So we have an election coming up for one of our elected seats on February 8th. Today will be the last day that we are receiving ballot requests. So please go ahead and click that link in the chat box to request your ballot if you live within the Palouse Conservation District boundaries. And then please plan to return that. Those ballots need to be in our office for the ballot count on February 8th. Also, we have an appointed position available. That appointed position has a candidate filing deadline of March 31st. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us. Our website is there. Also, if you're interested in serving your community and are excited about voluntary natural resources conservation, but maybe an elected or an appointed seat doesn't seem quite right for you at the moment, we are always welcoming associate supervisors. So please feel free to reach out to any of our Board of Supervisors or myself, and we can talk with you more about that opportunity. So a little bit about what we're going to do tonight. We're going to take a moment to pause and think about the mission and vision of the Palouse Conservation District and the values that bring us together this evening, and all the values that guide us in the work that we do for voluntary conservation. We're going to reflect on the conservation accomplishments from 2021 and take a look downstream on what to expect for conservation in 2022. At the end of the evening, we'll have time for questions, and you can enter those questions into the chat box any point tonight or unmute yourself at the end. And our staff and board members are excited to answer those questions. And then we will have some closing remarks and wish you all a wonderful rest of your evening. So to start us off, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Palouse Conservation District, the district is a local government agency that engages with landowners on a voluntary basis to keep our air, water, soil, and habitats healthy. We are one of 4 conservation districts located in Whitman County, and we have 20 staff and 4 AmeriCorps members, 1 Veterans Conservation Corps member, and the 5-member volunteer board that you just met. Our mission is to foster the voluntary conservation of natural resources by providing the tools, education, technical expertise, and financial assistance to support our local community. And in all the actions we take in working with the community, we're working towards trying to be the trusted resource for voluntary conservation of natural resources, resulting in healthy ecosystems. The values that guide the work that we do and all that we do is we start with the community, and having this celebration that we're having this evening with our annual meeting is one of the ways that we bring the community together to make sure that the work that we're doing is community driven, that we are being of service to our community, and that we are, again, working towards having trust in all of our interactions with our partners and with the public through transparent communication. So additionally, we are always working towards the wise use of natural resources and providing the best quality education and technical assistance that we can. We use a collaborative approach for problem solving and reaching conservation goals. And those conservation goals are always an alignment of the landowner goals with conservation needs. And as a local government, we aim to be responsive and responsible in how we serve the community and using an efficient and effective use of those public resources. And we always welcome your feedback. We respect all voices and perspectives. And as Larry mentioned earlier, drop a note in the chat for us, or if you're interested, follow up with our staff or board later. We're always here to have an open ear and want to hear what's going on in the community and what the community needs are for conservation that we can help with. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of the high level accomplishments for this year, and then we're going to dive in and see the details in the program reports a little bit later. But some of the district accomplishments and highlights from 2021, as you heard in the welcome here, Jake Smith joined our Board of Supervisors. So it's wonderful to have Jake on serving the community in that capacity. We also did, as you know, and here we are again this evening in a Zoom remote annual meeting, we did a lot of adaptive programming. So working through the second year of this pandemic, we have continued to try to create new and innovative ways to reach folks, maintaining those relationships that we've fostered over the years and working to reach new audiences. Our team has done an incredible job, and I can say that we haven't really skipped a beat. So we have conservation going on the ground, we have education outreach activities ongoing, and research and monitoring. And it's been I know, a hard couple years for everybody, but we keep moving forward and meeting those community conservation needs together. We also welcomed our first ever Veterans Conservation Corps member, and that's been a wonderful program to engage with, and we hope to stay involved with that Veterans Conservation Corps program. You'll learn a little bit more about that throughout the evening. And then after many years of adapting and some growth at the district, we really worked hard to finalize our organizational structure. And we took some time to pause and get things steady internally so we could better serve the community and get more conservation out there. With that, I want to introduce you to the team for 2021. We have 4 program areas that serve the community. The first program you're going to hear from this evening is the Resource Conservation Program. And these are the amazing folks that are out there day in and day out working with landowners and community members. The Resource Conservation team does technical assistance. So if you have any kind of conservation questions or needs, these are the folks you should be reaching out to. They do conservation planning, will help you plan for the goals that you want to reach for conservation on your ground and in your community. And they're out there putting the conservation practices on the ground. The second program we're going to hear from tonight is Research and Monitoring. And here's the Research and Monitoring team. They work all the time out there monitoring what we're putting on the ground for conservation and making sure that the conservation practices that hit the ground are doing what we want them to do for conservation of natural resources. So they're measuring and monitoring to make sure that we're hitting the mark of where we're trying to go as a community for conservation. Then we're going to hear from the Education and Outreach team. And these are the folks who work hard to create all kinds of education and learning opportunities, helping the community reach their conservation goals through learning more about conservation opportunities, more about conservation topics. They present workshops and informational presentations. They host speakers to come in, and they help with events like this. And then finally, we're going to hear from finance and admin, and that team keeps everything moving and working. It's what makes us a well-oiled machine, trying to keep all the pieces and numbers straight and helping us get even more conservation out there. And this is your conservation team for 2021. So you'll get a chance to hear from some of these folks throughout the evening as we have program highlights and as we answer your questions. But we invite you to reach out anytime we're available, and folks can come out on site and take a look at your ground and help you with your conservation goals. We couldn't get any of this work done without our partners, and our first and primary partner is the landowners, the folks who are actually doing the conservation on the ground. We're here to provide some resources, but those are the folks that make it happen. So I just want to present some highlights from working with landowners and also working with our other partners. So we had a big year in 2021. We wrapped up our original award for the Palouse Regional Conservation Partnership, which was funded in part by the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And that agreement spanned from 2015 to 2021. And we're going to take a look at some of the deliverables and outcomes of that this evening. In 2021, we were also awarded a renewal of that same Regional Conservation Partnership Program, the RCPP, for another $5.5 million in federal funding to be leveraged by $8.5 million in local and regional contributions. And that partnership will be running, or started in 2021. It's really going to hit the ground running in 2022 and will continue through 2026. And then just a few months ago, we received notice that we were awarded a grant through the Natural Resources Conservation Service in their Conservation Innovation Grant Program for on-farm trials. And this is my favorite acronym. This was developed by a local producer in Eastern Washington, and it's Flourish, Farmers Leading Our United Revolution in Soil Health. So we're going to learn more about Flourish this evening as well. But jumping into the Palouse RCPP, you see in front of you the geographic region that partnership focused on in the original proposal and continues to focus on in our renewal. One of the things that I love the most about the RCPP program is because of that input of federal funding and how we can leverage that with local and regional dollars, we're able to address the natural resource concerns at the actual scale that they're happening at. So this is focused on the watershed level, so not the political boundaries. So this is one of the ways that we can work across even state lines. You can see here that the Palouse RCPP spans both Washington and a little bit of Idaho. We have 8 conservation districts working together in partnership. We're joined by state and federal agencies, including the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the Washington State Conservation Commission, the Washington Department of Ecology, Washington Fish and Wildlife, and Idaho Department of Fish and Game. We also have the Nez Perce Tribe as a partner working on this, and the universities with Washington State University and the University of Idaho. Another unique thing about this particular funding source and the partnership is being able to bring in nonprofit organizations. So we work with the Palouse Land Trust, the Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute, the Pacific Northwest Direct Seed Association as well. And then new to the renewal are the Phoenix Conservancy and the Palouse Audubon Society. So this partnership has just been a wonderful thing to help us work on the main goals, which are water quality, soil health, and habitat across the Palouse watershed. Some of the things we were able to achieve in the first 6 years of this partnership included putting over 77,000 acres of conservation tillage funding and assistance out there. We installed over 354 acres of riparian buffers. We're able to protect over 900 acres of conservation easements of working prime farmland, as well as Palouse Prairie. We were able to save over 165,000 tons of soil, and we're able to certify 14 producers as Farm Smart certified producers. Additionally, there are other project outcomes, as you can see on this slide, and we were able to roll out several innovations, including a riparian and buffer incentive program that provided signing incentives for landowners who were interested in putting in buffers, paying those landowners a yearly soil rental rate, and providing funding for yearly maintenance of those buffers to make sure that they have the best possible chances of success. We also had the commodity buffer program, which was originally developed by Spokane CD, that we were able to implement throughout the partnership. And that is such an interesting program, and it's been very successful because it will guarantee a producer who enters into the program the same yearly payment as they would get from growing the crop adjacent to their buffer for installing the conservation buffer. So that's been a great program. And then the research and monitoring staff have been able to work across the watershed to implement some paired watershed studies. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that program really focuses on is making sure that we're getting the outcomes that we want from the conservation we're putting on the ground. Some of the preliminary data from those watershed studies show that there's 4 times more sediment delivered at the outlets of the conventionally tilled watersheds than those that are practicing conservation tillage and no-till. So we're saving a lot of soil. They're keeping it on the farm ground where it belongs. We're also seeing that the nitrate concentration in surface water is over 3 times greater at the outlet of those conventionally tilled watersheds as compared to those where we're trying to reduce the amount of tillage and doing those other conservation ag activities. And then as we move into the renewal period for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, I just wanted to show you what we originally proposed as a partnership, what we were able to deliver, and how we used those outcomes and the deliverables met to set the course for what we'll be doing as a partnership in the renewal. And what I wanted to draw attention to is we had the $5.5 million in federal funding, and we used that federal funding and combined it, as I said, to leverage local and regional funding. So in total, we were able to put over $14 million in conservation on the ground across the watershed. And that's far more than we originally anticipated. We thought we would match the $5.5 million with federal money with $5.5 million local. We were able to produce over $9 million as partners, both locally and regionally, to leverage that $5.5 million. So almost double of what we had originally anticipated. And so moving forward, we're committing an additional $8 million over the next 5 years. On those deliverables for riparian buffer, conservation tillage, and easements. In some cases there, we were able to deliver almost double what we originally thought we could, really speaking to the power of the partnership and what we can do together when we all work together and leverage the resources and expertise that we have. So a lot to celebrate with the first 5 years of the conservation partnership through the RCPP, and a lot to look forward to in the next 5 years. And with that, we're going to really get down and see the details of how all this work comes together. And we're going to start with taking a look at resource conservation. So Brad Johnson will be joining us. He serves as the program lead for the Resource Conservation Program. Here you go, Brad.
Thanks, Jennifer. And just the partnerships were huge. That's just amazing. The theme that Jennifer was talking about was partnerships. And the biggest partnership is with the local landowners. And we couldn't do what we're doing without voluntary participation with the landowners. I'm waiting for the next slide to come up. Here we go. So within the Resource Conservation Program, there's quite a few different things we do: conservation ag, riparian restoration, Palouse Prairie, salmon recovery and streams that drain directly into the Snake River that have steelhead, and then livestock programs. So Jennifer showed what happened over the last 5 years. Just in 2021, within the Resource Conservation Program, we've got 17,935 native trees and shrubs were planted on 12.6 acres of buffer, 98 acres of riparian buffer enhanced or maintained, and 14 different sites that staff worked on over the past year. And you can see from the pictures, there's some watering that's going on, some building of some stream bank stabilization structures, and some of the tree planting, and some Palouse Prairie there in the upper left. The conservation ag side of things, working with RCPP and other programs, ecology funding, we did over 11,992 acres of conservation tillage. We did 4,234 acres in nutrient management, 284 acres of cover crops, 1.4 miles enrolled in the commodity buffer, and 17 acres of new CRP plans developed. And that's a partnership with NRCS. Our staff went out and worked with re-enrollments and different things on CRP plans. Site visits happened. The conservation plans, enrolled new acres in conservation tillage. Working with that nutrient management program has been important to ensure that we don't get weed resistant crops. And then I talked about the certifying the conservation reserve program. In the RCP and ecology funding was mentioned already. Livestock management. This has been an exciting program. We're working with producers with a couple of different funding sources to to work in Snake River tributaries, ecology primarily, and the Washington State Conservation Commission for technical assistance. You can see some of the highlights there. We did some livestock and riparian projects in 4 Mile Creek, installed a stream crossing with the livestock pipeline and 1 watering trough, and exclusion fencing and riparian restoration for winter and spring areas. Or they're planned for the winter, this coming winter and spring, sorry about that. So in some of the streams in Whitman County, we've been getting funding to do some stream bank stabilization and bioengineering projects. From the pictures on the left, you can see we're just taking Christmas tree material. Staff works with folks to, or works with the Boy Scouts to get donated, or the Christmas trees. We collect those, and then we also get other material, whether it be from private or from the U.S. Forest Service, to do stream bank stabilization structures. You can see 565 feet were stabilized, 1,500 feet of stream bank on existing structures. And couple of highlights, we did a culvert barrier to bridge on Steptoe Creek, which resulted in 135 post-assisted log structures. And there's, like we talked about, the partnerships are huge. We've worked with NRCS, we've worked with Whitman County, we worked with local landowners, the U.S. Forest Service, WDF and W. It's just been awesome to bring all the partners to the table. I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to talk about the Palouse Prairie and Upland work that he's been doing.
Just a little bit of highlights about our Palouse Prairie work that we've been doing. Most of our Palouse Prairie work we can accomplish thanks to grants from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And this year we were able to, on 22 acres of Palouse Prairie, we were able to maintain them and keep them free of weeds. We planted 500 spaldings catch fly plugs and monitored 494, mostly on Steptoe Butte, but also on some smaller prairie remnants in the area. And we planted 3 acres of upland habitat. And that's just a project I wanted to highlight because we usually don't get to do those types of projects too much. Most of our funding that we get is focused on riparian areas, but a local landowner was interested in some of the work we've been doing around, and he wanted to enhance some wildlife habitat on a CRP field he had. So we planted 569 trees on his property. The work was completed by a Washington Conservation Corps, which did really a great job, as well as AmeriCorps members and PCD staff. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brad.
Thanks, Anthony. And just like Anthony was saying, if you're interested in different things, all you have to do is look on our website and contact one of the resource conservation coordinators, and we can figure out if we've got funding or if we have to apply for funding. But within the program, looking downstream in 2022, taking new signups for implementing soil health and water quality practices through the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, like Jennifer talked about. We have Washington State Department of Ecology funding for direct seed, riparian restoration, and livestock projects starting in the spring of 2022. Flourish, the soil health contracts that we'll be working on. We'll be continuing riparian buffer implementation and maintaining existing plantings that have occurred previous. We'll continue providing technical assistance. And as always, we'll seek additional funding for conservation practices. We hope you've enjoyed this part of the presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Boylan with the Research and Monitoring Program.
Great, thanks, Brad. As he mentioned, I'm Ryan Boylan. I'm the Research and Monitoring Coordinator at the Palouse Conservation District. And myself and Kaylin O'Malley, who's one of the members of the Research and Monitoring team, are going to present some of the highlights from 2021 and the things we're looking forward to in the year to come. But we are a team, and there's a bunch of people that made all this work possible. So I just want to let everyone know who's on that team, and it's Nick Harris, Kaylin O'Malley, who I mentioned, Garrett Bass, who's a new addition, Arju Martinez was the former AmeriCorps member, and then Chantel Butt. And so one of the biggest accomplishments of 2021 was we completed a readiness watershed assessment for Spring Creek Union Flat Creek watershed that's located down near Colton and Uniontown. And this was part of a Natural Resource Conservation Service program called the National Water Quality Initiative. And essentially what we did was did a bunch of watershed planning. And through that planning, the NRCS opens up a pool of money that's specific cost share dollars for best management practices in this watershed. And that's currently open. And that's just a map of areas that were identified that could potentially be good locations to implement some best management practices. We also spend a lot of our time out in the field collecting water quality samples. And this year we purchased a software that's called Water Information Systems by Kisters, conveniently named Whiskey. And this just helps us get better organized for all the data that we've been collecting. It'll also help us generate reports, enable us to do better like quality assurance and quality control in the data that we're collecting, as well as get that data back out to the public once it's been collected. With that, we also had to purchase a new server, so it's pretty exciting. And then through one of the Department of Ecology grants that we wrote, we worked with a PhD student at Washington State University and one of the hydrology professors there to develop this planning tool that we're calling the Hydrologic Characterization Fields tool. Essentially, the PhD student ran a model that's known as the Watershed Erosion Prediction Project model to predict 30-year averages of sediment erosion for conservation tillage, no tillage, or no-till and conventional tillage, essentially for every field within the Palouse River watershed. And these maps that were generated will potentially be integrated into a ranking tool that we'll use for the Palouse River Watershed Regional Conservation Partnership Program, as well as just help us identify areas that could be focused for education outreach and could have high potential for a good use of conservation dollars. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kaylin, and she's going to talk about some additional work that we've been doing.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. One of the things that we were excited about getting done this past year was working with Whitman County and Washington State Department of Transportation to install road signs at 6 stream crossings. This is through Department of Ecology funding, and it was an effort for citizens to gain awareness of the streams in our watershed by learning their names. We also got to do a ton of soil sampling through various funding sources this past year. And we partnered with Washington State Department of Agriculture to participate in their soil health initiative to gain a better understanding of soil health metrics in Washington State. And we sampled a total of 49 fields throughout Washington. And then we also got to collaborate with education and outreach to build out our water quality citizen science program called Confluence Crew. These are pictures from a test run that we had with some community members, and it was really great to test out some equipment and gain some interest for this upcoming program. So we're excited to build this out in the coming year. I'll hand it back to Ryan.
Yeah, so we also had some good new additions to our team. Chantella Butt was hired as the Research and Monitoring Specific AmeriCorps member. She started in October and has been a huge help doing a bunch of mapping and a lot of the field data collection that we do. And then Garrett Bass was hired on as a new Research and Monitoring Specialist. And he's been doing a lot of field work as well and helping out with managing all the data and integrating that into that new Whiskey platform that I mentioned previously.
Yeah, and some more work that we got to do.
This was also in partnership with Washington State Department of Agriculture. In 2020, we sampled for pesticide monitoring on one site along Dry Creek, just outside of Colfax. And this past year, we got to expand that monitoring to 2 additional sites in one of our paired watershed studies on Kamiak Creek and Thorn Creek near St. John. And then also, this was a lot of the work of Audrey Martinez, one of our past AmeriCorps members, but we got to purchase a drone and start up a drone program, completing a few flights this past summer. And we plan to expand this program and utilize the drone for future projects and research and monitoring for Palouse Conservation District.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg of the work that we completed in 2021. But if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out to Kaylin or I or anybody else on the team. But what we're looking forward to in 2022, there's quite a bit. The first thing is the Flourish program that both Jennifer and Brad mentioned. Essentially, we're going to be working with 24 farmers across Washington, Idaho, and Oregon to support the adoption of cover cropping, interseeding, and cover crop livestock integration to promote soil health practices. And our program is going to do a lot of the soil sampling associated with that. And I know Tammy is going to go into this program in more detail in a little bit. Through one of our Department of Ecology grants, we're also going to do a longitudinal temperature study on Paradise Creek, essentially from the border, the Washington-Idaho border, down to Pullman. And the district has been doing work along Paradise Creek and the Chipman Trail for at least the last 10 years. And we kind of want to assess the effects of post-assisted log structures and beaver dam analogs on stream temperature there. As Kayla mentioned, we're also working with the citizen science program, the Confluence Crew. And our side, well, one of our sides of that is to get the data from the citizen scientists back out to the public so they can see it. So we've developed this data workflow to get there, or we're developing, and we'll continue to work on that. And then finally, we're doing another really cool project. It's called Saturated Buffers, and this is just a pilot project. And this is a practice that's used a bit in the Midwest, but has some promise for us in the Pacific Northwest. And so that diagram there, you can see on the left where it says conventional outlet would be like a traditional tile drain that moves from a field to a stream. And what saturated buffers do is they keep that traditional tile drain going to the stream, but they also run one parallel to the stream. And the idea is that if you're running water parallel to the stream and planting riparian vegetation, that you can uptake some of the nutrients that would potentially make it into the stream. So we're hopefully going to do this on 3 sites in the Palouse, over the next couple of years. So if anyone's interested, please reach out to us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jody Prout, and she's going to talk about the education outreach program.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Good evening, everyone. Education outreach is truly a team effort across the district, from providing technical assistance to leading volunteer events. All district staff and AmeriCorps members strive to provide exceptional public service to our community in everything we do. My name is Jody Prout. I am the program lead of the Education Outreach Department, and I have the great pleasure to work alongside Elizabeth Sebo, our Education Outreach Specialist, and Claire Pine, our AmeriCorps Education Outreach Technician serving with Washington Service Corps this year. We're supported by the dedicated staff you've heard from so far, as well as our tireless in-house AmeriCorps members and community volunteers. So 2001 has continued to challenge us and think about new ways to engage with our community, continuing programming without being face-to-face. We resumed in-person volunteer events this spring with limited participation and social distancing in place. We hosted 42 volunteer events, engaging 300 volunteers, and we were able to continue efforts to do restoration across the watershed. We held 16 educational events and workshops engaging over 1,000 land managers and community members, both virtually and in person. The 16 Adopt a Stream segments we co-sponsor with the city of Pullman gave volunteers the opportunity to have a personal investment in their waterways and keep our creeks and rivers clear of debris. While we were limited by in-person interactions with students, our team developed creative ways to engage with students in hands-on and place-based learning through pre-made activity kits, self-guided workbooks, and entertaining videos. Over 1,300 K-12 students participated in our educational programming in both Whitman and Asotin counties, exceeding the numbers we had reached in the previous years. One such curriculum that we focused on was Water News on the Palouse, which was introduced this spring, geared towards 4th and 5th grade students on water quality and water conservation. Over the course of a week, students watched a video on a different topic each day and then did an activity to think critically about the content. And by the end, students were dubbed a Grand Ronde Aquifer Guardian, pledging to protect our local aquifer and water resources on the Palouse. We continued to do virtual programming with Wheat Week, which is based on agriculture and water quality education, and Drain Rangers, which is on stormwater management. We also hosted a virtual Envirothon competition, which is a natural resource competition for high school students. Our local team, Garpal High School, won the Washington State competition and then represented Washington at the national competition. Ag teacher Mark Sawyer and his students have worked really hard towards this for many years. So we're proud to have been able to support them in these efforts. We also supported Pine Creek Conservation District in hosting a soil judging competition at the base of Steptoe Butte in October. So while nothing can beat face-to-face interactions, we tried our best to connect with the public on a variety of topics, from folks' living room or their farm shop, hoping to give them something to think about, whether on the tractor or spark some inspiration for their own conservation goals. The Conservation Talk Series is a monthly series geared towards the general public, from composting for farms and gardens to the secret life of beavers. Local experts presented on a variety of topics. Another series we hosted is the Soil Health Sit Down. It's a producer-driven series aimed to encourage dialogue surrounding soil health practices with producers, industry professionals, and researchers. And this is a pivot from our in-person alternative cropping symposium, which I hope we can bring back when we safely can. We also hosted a pesticide education event for credits with over 130 participants, and we will be offering that again this winter. I'll have some more information to come on that. So. And while our community events allowed us an opportunity to connect with the public and hone in on our Zoom skills, this year was all about adapting our programming in a digital world. And one avenue was through video. From videos on livestock best management practices to water conservation with rain barrels, our team became proficient in video production, adding another level to our skill set. Elizabeth led the charge on developing engaging videos for our Water News on the Palouse curriculum, with cameos from many of our staff and AmeriCorps members. And most recently, we have wrapped up production on a series of training videos for Confluence Crew, PCD's own in-house citizen science water quality monitoring program. And Elizabeth, Claire, Chantel, and Kaylin have done a tremendous job on developing clear guidelines for volunteers while also practicing effective science communication tactics. So we're really excited for this program to come out. Most videos that we produce can be viewed on our YouTube channel alongside other event recordings. So please head over there and check them out. Another big initiative for us this past year was citizen science. So for those that aren't aware, citizen science is the practice of public participation and collaboration in research to increase scientific knowledge. Through citizen science, people are able to share and contribute to data monitoring and collection programs. So these are highlights of a few citizen science opportunities that we offered and we are currently working on. So as the research and monitoring team mentioned, we're in the process of developing a citizen science water quality monitoring program. This will allow individuals and groups to be active participants in water quality data collection in their own backyard and will assist in making management decisions about the watershed. In July, we held an in-person pollinator education event at Koppel Farm in Pullman. With the support of the WSU entomology program, attendees made observations on pollinators through a platform called iNaturalist. It's a platform that does mapping and shares observations for biodiversity. We also had a live honeybee hive and some conversations around pollinators, the role they play in our food security. This was also a great time to showcase some native plant plots that we installed at Koppel to encourage native pollinator activity. And a huge shout out to Garrett Lasavita for all her great work in establishing these plots, which continue to serve as a showcase to the community. So I would highly encourage you to get down there and check them out. And finally, we are in planning stages of hosting the City Nature Challenge, which is a 4-day event that'll happen this spring, and it celebrates species identification and friendly competitions to capture biodiversity observations. So we will be going up against the city of Moscow for the competition locally. One community-centric initiative we worked on as part of funding we received through the Environmental Protection Agency was Know Your Flow. This month-long campaign was aimed at water resource literacy on both water conservation and water quality. We hosted a student art contest with the theme Life Without Water, and we received 23 entries. We also hosted a series of virtual education events and gave away over 100 free water saving device kits that were distributed to participants at the workshops as well as through the Community Action Center out into the community. And as part of the same funding we received through the EPA, we were able to provide $5,000 mini grant opportunities to partners in the community working on water resource literacy initiatives. So this is just a quick highlight of those partners and the projects they worked on. You may have seen some of these out in the community with interpretive signage or hands-on activities. So yeah, this funding opportunity was a great way for us to support our partners' efforts and broaden water resource literacy outreach in our community. So looking ahead, for 2022, we have a lot of exciting things coming down the pipe. Our Confluence Crew monitoring program will be officially online starting in April. In just a moment, I'll direct you where you can sign up if you are interested in participating. We'll continue doing curriculum development for K through 12 programming, hosting monthly virtual programming until we're able to do in-person safely, leading efforts for the City Nature Challenge at the end of April, early May, exploring ways to increase community food access and support our local producers, and continue education efforts on the watershed. We also receive funding through a program, No Child Left Inside, and that grant will be focused on engaging high school students with natural resource professionals. And then doing outreach efforts for the Flourish grant that was talked about previously on soil health practices, and advertising any upcoming cost share or sign up opportunities that are coming down the pipe. And finally, I just wanted to get a few announcements on your radar for things that are coming up. So as I mentioned, Confluence Crew is our in-house citizen science water quality monitoring program. It will start in earnest in April, but we are currently taking names from individuals or groups that are interested in participating. So please head to our website, and it looks like Liz has put that into the chat. So please head over and fill out an interest form, and then we will be in touch. A huge shout out to our Veteran Conservation Corps intern, Trent, for designing our program logo. He's a very talented illustrator and shared his talents with us during his service. Another upcoming opportunity is part of our conservation talk series. We'll be hosting the great folks at the Phoenix Conservancy with a presentation on new approaches to Palouse Prairie outreach and restoration on February 9th via Zoom. You can go to our website for meeting details and how to register. Also check out that link in the chat box that Liz put in. It'll take you right there. Another upcoming event is a Palouse pesticide education event. 2 credits will be available. It'll be happening February 22nd from 7 to 9 a.m. via Zoom. Again, head to that link for meeting details and how to register. And then finally, for those who have not done so, our tree sale is live on our website and we are accepting orders due to current health restrictions. We are only accepting orders for pickup and there will be no in-person browsing the day of. So head to our website. If you haven't done that yet, there is still time. Species are running low. They are getting taken up. So if you're interested, head over and see if there's something that'll work for your property. And with that, thank you for your time. I'll pass it on to Shelley Scott with our finance and administration team.
Thank you, Jody, and good evening, everyone. I'm Shelley Scott, and I am the manager of the Finance and Administrative Program. And I'm supported by a really awesome team, and that includes Caitlin Henricks, Rachel Majors, and Carrie Swendeman. So these are just a few things to let you know that we processed a little over $2.2 million in grant vouchers and payment requests. We issued a little over $1 million in checks and another $1.1 million in electronic transactions this year. So we were busy. This next slide is to just, this is 11 months only. So we had not closed out our year at the time this was developed, but kind of wanted to show the source of our revenues in 2021. And as you can see, the bulk of the money for this last year was state funds. We had a little over 70% that were state and a little over 14% that were federal and 2.25% that were federal indirect. This changes every year. It just depends on when new grants start and when they close out. So our federal grants will be starting again in 2022. So you'll see that distribution change a little by next year's reporting. And if we'll go to the next slide, please. And then again, it takes a team and I'm supported by some of the most awesome people I've ever worked with, and I appreciate all of them greatly. We also, in 2020, we purchased an integrated software platform called Springbrook Express. We moved that to the cloud this year, and we completed a lot of the build out of the program. So advanced payroll, we now do all of our quarterly and monthly and annual reporting within the software, all of our general ledger transactions, and that build out is complete. We implemented the pay cards, and that process is complete. And then the grants management build out is in process, but it is nearing completion, and we should be complete no later than March of this year. We tried a new process for our election this year. We went with mail-in, and we got to do it twice actually. So we learned a lot through the process. And tonight, again, you're encouraged to request a ballot and vote in our 2022 election. So that's now due to some of the COVID requirements and working remotely, we developed a Smartsheet ballot request that's linked to our website and a dedicated voicemail box for election questions and ballot requests. And then we have multiple team members complete the required election supervisor training that's provided by the commission. And then our office space got a facelift, so we completed that this year as well. So in employee resources, we made some more PCD dashboard improvements. We added an internal audit folder to the board dashboard so that our internal audit process is changed. Instead of being just once a year, it's added to and reviewed on a monthly basis. We implemented a donated leave policy, and we added a safety portal to the dashboard as well. And we continue to adapt to the COVID-19 restrictions to make sure as many of these resources were available to our team as possible. And we developed a process for filing employee and civil rights grievances, which is another element that's required for many of our federal grants. And we developed a process for requesting accommodation as well. And with that, thank you, and I will turn it back over to Jennifer.
Thanks so much to all the programs for letting us take a peek at some of the highlights and those program-specific capacities for 2021. I want to talk a little bit about some of the goals that we have for 2022 at the district level. We expect just some small refinements to the PCD infrastructure so that we can better serve the community and staff, but we're not looking at any major shifts in infrastructure or major changes to our programs or staffing. So we're excited to kind of use 2022 as a year to really feel grounded, and we have our new long-range plan that was developed by the community a couple of years ago. So we're focusing on that and how to reach the goals in that strategic plan. We continue to diversify our funding sources to ensure that we have continuity in the programs and the services that we offer to the community, and then continue to strengthen our current relationships as well as reach new audiences to make sure that we are offering conservation opportunities for all. We have a lot of opportunities coming up to continue listening to the community, to hear about new ways that we can support your conservation priorities, and how we can work together with our partners and the land users and land managers across the landscape to implement the voluntary conservation efforts that are near and dear to all of our hearts. And then we'll be strengthening and expanding our local and regional partnerships, as you heard about already with the renewal of the Palouse Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and then also Flourish. And with that, I'm going to invite Tammy Stubbs to join us to talk a little bit more about the Flourish program.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. You've already heard about this a little bit this evening, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about our brand new Conservation Innovation Grant that we've received from NRCS. We're excited to roll out the Flourish program, Farmers Leading Our United Revolution in Soil Health. The great thing about this grant is that it is farmer-led. And so the idea for the project came from a grower, and the project itself will be farmer-led. And by that, I mean that farmers will be conducting the trials in their own fields, using their own equipment and designing their soil health trials themselves. We have three major objectives for this study. Ryan mentioned that we'll be evaluating soil health. In addition to that, there will be economic costs and benefit analysis, and we'll be looking at social community impacts. And then another big part of the grant is forming the Flourish network for sharing knowledge among producers and with the general public. The grant, it's a soil health demonstration trial, but we'll be implementing cover crop studies as part of the trial. And so those will consist of 4 different treatments. A green fallow, meaning a cover crop that'll be happening in between fallow periods, in between crops. Green fallow with livestock integration. We'll be interseeding cover crops with the cash crop. And then finally, there will be interseeded cover crops and cash crops with livestock integration. We'll have a number of partners throughout Idaho, Washington, and Oregon on the project. In addition to each of the growers that will be involved, we'll be partnering with scientists from the University of Idaho, the Washington State Department of Agriculture, and also with conservation districts throughout the region. And so stay tuned. We'll be providing more information on the project as it becomes available. We'll be getting started on this early in 2022.
Okay, thanks so much, Tammy. Well, because we can't always take you out there on the ground with us while we're doing all this conservation work with our partners and landowners, we thought we'd take you on a little virtual tour. So we have a few minutes here of a video highlight of the work happening on the ground and some of those highlights from 2021. I would invite you during this time, if you have any questions that you'd like staff to answer, that you could put those in the chat box, or if you'd like to ask those directly, you can unmute yourself because we'll be going into questions right after the video highlight. Well, we hope that you enjoyed that video, and as I mentioned, trying to get you out there with us. So thanks to everyone in the community and all the partners for all their hard work this year. It's that teamwork that makes the dream work. So we really appreciate everybody's contribution for working towards our conservation goals. As a last reminder, if you are registered to vote and live within the Palouse Conservation District boundaries, you can request a ballot for upcoming elections. So that link is in your chat box. So you can go ahead and request that ballot. Today will be the last day. And then we'd like to take a few minutes to answer some of the questions that we received this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and call on a couple of our staff members to answer some of these questions. And then after questions, we'll go into the raffles that we have for the raffle items from our sponsors. So the first question comes from David, and I'm going to have Anthony Hatcher, one of our conservation coordinators, field this question. So Anthony, the question is, what is your focus for Palouse Prairie habitat for the future?
Yeah, David, so excuse me. So we just recently received a grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to continue some of the work we've been doing with spotting sketchfly, which I should have specified earlier for folks that don't know. That's a federally threatened plant listed under the Endangered Species Act. And we received a grant to continue some work that we've been doing on Steptoe Butte to increase the population there. And that grant's going to last for 3 years. We're hoping to plant around 1,500 more individuals there. That grant also is going to allow us to do some weed control there where we have planted those individuals. We're also going to be able to do some work with that grant at the smaller prairies, including Pitt, to continue monitoring spotting sketchfly there and do a weed control and maintain the prairie, as well as plant windrow on the north side of that, which is right adjacent to a crop field to intercept any herbicide drift that may be coming over from there, as well as continue monitoring at Wheeling Cemetery, the population there, and Kramer Prairie to do some continued monitoring of the spotting sketchfly population there, as well as some weed management. We also, a big part of that grant is writing a habitat management plan for Steptoe Butte, which is part of the delisting criteria for spotting sketchfly. In addition to that, we're going to continue to seek funding, especially for pollinator habitat for private landowners. That's a program we're trying to build out here. That's a thing we've applied to in the past, and we're going to keep pursuing that. And yeah, just keep trying to maintain the prairies we have. And it's, like I said, we have that one grant for 3 years, but we're gonna keep working and keep trying to keep our remnants in good shape, as well as pursue funding to do pollinator plantings and some prairie remnant restoration on some private landowners' properties that are interested.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Anthony. There is a follow-up question to that. What has been the survival rate for the Spalding's catchfly plantings?
This year with the drought, it was low. I would say we had about 14% survival this year. In the past, we've had as high as 50. 56, I think, was the highest we've had for some of our plantings. We've learned a lot of things about how to keep the plants alive. Herbivory is a big problem with those plantings, and the drought this year was really tough on them. Got some strategies moving forward. It's a real cooperative effort getting those plants to survive and increase the populations. We're really close with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They've been a great resource. We have a technical team that in all the 4 states where spotting sketchfly occurs, and the agencies that work on that plant, getting it to help get it delisted. We have a meeting twice a year this year, and some really great resources there. Laytah Soil and Water has been really helpful. They've been doing this work for a lot longer than us. Brenda Earhart's been a great resource, as well as Turnbull Wildlife Refuge. So we keep putting our heads together, and hopefully we can increase our populations. This year, like I said, was rough, but we learned some things, and we're gonna keep going, try to try to get those numbers up.
Great, thanks, Anthony. And I know we're running a little late on time, but we've got another question here that I'm going to ask Ryan to address. Ray asks, how is Palouse Conservation District doing with quantifying the actual resource improvement, including clean water, healthy soil conditions, and riparian buffer improvements?
The short answer is really well, I'd say. We have 2 paired watershed studies that we have had going for the last 5 years. And we're seeing promising results as far as clean water goes. We've also teamed up with Anthony and one of the AmeriCorps members, Josh, to do a bunch of vegetation assessments and our riparian restoration plantings to assess a bunch of things, survival and what we could do to improve some of those plantings. And then we have a soil health program that's been running for the last 5 years to look at a variety of management practices across the Palouse River watershed. As a scientist, I can't say we're doing a great job at improving things, but I think like the program itself has the structure in place that could potentially give us good results in the future.
Great, thanks, Ryan.
Mhm.
And I'll answer one question here. Katie asks, what would you say your biggest success was this year? And I would say our biggest success for this year is just a testament to the tenacity of the farmers and landowners and partners and our staff to continue to seek funding for soil health and regenerative ag. And I know you've heard about it several times tonight, but we're so excited that Flourish got funded. And that is a program that will combine all of our program areas, from resource conservation and education outreach and research and monitoring to make that work. And, that funding has been in the works for over 3 years now. It was originally submitted for funding, and it was in year 1 when we submitted it with partners, or actually I believe a partner CD submitted it. It was too small a geographic scope. So then the following year it was submitted, but then it was too big of a geographic scope. So I call it the Goldilocks effect. This year, just due to that tenacity, it was submitted again, and it was just the right scope and scale. And I just think that the partners and farmers hanging in there and trying again to get something funded that they really believe in was probably the biggest success. And there's just been a lot of excitement and energy. Everyone's hearing about regenerative ag, and it's nice to see that the research is there and the funding is there to help support farmers to do what they know they want and need to do on their farms. So again, that being a farmer-driven program is really exciting, and I would say would be one of the best successes of the year. And with that, I know there are a lot of other questions out there, so I am going to invite you to send those questions. Continue to send them in the chat box. We'll follow up with you via email or reach out to our staff or board members anytime. We love to hear your questions and talk more about conservation with you. So I would like to now shift to the raffle winners for the evening. I want to thank our sponsors and folks who made donations for the raffle this evening. We have 4 items that were made available. So the Foundry here in Pullman has a gift certificate that they donated for this evening, and that gift certificate will be going to Nathan Enos. So congratulations, Nathan. Our second raffle is going to a gift certificate from Rico's, and that is going to Ingrid Sadler. So congratulations, Ingrid. Our third raffle this evening is from Plants of the Wild, and it's a gift certificate, and that is going to Amanda Stahl. So congratulations, Amanda. And then finally, we have a tree sale gift certificate for the Palouse Conservation District tree sale, and that's going to Jason Earl. So congratulations to all of our raffle winners. Look for an email from us with information on how to get your items. That'll be coming soon. And then thank you once again to everyone who took time on this, their evening to be with us. You will all be receiving an email invitation to take a post-event survey. Please give us your feedback about the annual meeting. It helps us shape our future events and gives us inspiration for future ways to serve the community. Also, if you have a conservation topic or activity that you would be interested in Palouse Conservation District sponsoring, please submit that through the feedback form. Please also indicate if you're interested in any district services or upcoming funding opportunities for conservation. It'll be a short survey, only a minute or two, and we just would love to hear ways that we can better help serve the community in reaching their conservation goals. So thanks again for joining us tonight, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you. Goodbye.